If you haven't heard about Gunung Padang and the controversy surrounding it, then what you're about to hear will probably shock you. And by the end of this video, you'll see just how viciously tribal this debate has become. And I'll cover a huge update that's just been announced regarding this fascinating ancient mystery. Gunung Padang is a megalithic site in Indonesia that has sparked intense debate over its origins and significance. Built atop an extinct volcano, it contains massive stone blocks and layered terraces, initially believed to date back around 2,500 years. However, a new study using radiocarbon dating suggests that buried layers beneath the surface could be as old as 24,000 years, built in a pyramid-like structure. Considering the conventional timeline puts the start of civilization at roughly 5,000 years ago, this completely upends mainstream archaeology's idea of the past. Now, skeptics dismiss these claims, meaning the site has become something of a battleground between conventional science and alternative history. What's accepted by everyone is that the structures on top of the hill were human-made and demonstrate advanced stoneworking skills, which is already pretty damn fascinating. However, in 2023, a paper published by Dr. Danny Hillman Natawijaya argued that the site contains much older buried layers, indicating a massive, ancient, man-made structure that suggests advanced prehistoric engineering and destroys mainstream archaeological consensus. Now, this wasn't just a random group of crazy nutters. It wasn't some weirdo like me going there and claiming it was some ancient pyramid. No, this was a team of seasoned and well-credentialed geologists, geophysicists, and engineers. Dr. Hillman himself has 177 publications and over 9,000 citations. He's a senior geologist with an extensive background in tectonics and paleoseismology, exactly the fields of study most qualified to interpret this type of data. His team included experts in geophysical surveying and radiocarbon dating, and the paper is meticulously put together with lots of really interesting evidence. However, the controversy began when the journal Archaeological Prospection retracted the paper in early 2024, citing issues with its scientific rigor. Now, this retraction fueled a heated debate between mainstream archaeologists, who saw it as a victory for academic integrity, and alternative history proponents, who decried it as censorship and suppression. So what's going on here? Despite undergoing and passing an extensive 9-month peer review process, the paper was retracted due to concerns raised by 4 anonymous experts. Their criticism was that the paper had an over-reliance on soil dating, that the foundations were natural, not man-made, and that there was a lack of artifacts to support the groundbreaking date. Basically, they argued that just because the soil was dated back to 20,000 years ago, they didn't see evidence of human presence at this time, and so the artifacts and structures cited must be completely natural. But let's take a closer look at this evidence. The team presented several key pieces of evidence to support their claims. Ground-penetrating radar detected anomalous cavities beneath the megalithic structures, interpreted as potential man-made chambers or tunnels. Underground, they found layered stone walls and terraces, extending several meters, suggesting organized construction rather than natural formations. Radiocarbon dating indicated construction phases dating to 20,000 to 25,000 years ago, pointing to long-term human occupation. The team also proposed that the large basaltic columns had been deliberately cut, shaped, and arranged, reflecting serious engineering knowledge. Additionally, carved stone artifacts and unusual features were cited as evidence of human craftsmanship. One notable example of this is the Kujang stone. Let's listen to what Eric from Ancient Epoch has to say about this, because I think he does a pretty good job.
I believe I've compiled the most extensive look at the artifact to date. Utilizing this image, which gives the artifact scale, I printed out a version for myself to test how its ergonomic shape potentially would fit a human hand. And I must say, it fit beautifully, as you can see. I used this image to illustrate the grip classification on my first slide for my lithic presentation. So let's begin. Lithic Criteria 1. Morphology. The artifact is made from stone. It displays an ergonomic shape, allowing for a left-handed hammer grip hold. Criteria 2. Topology. Does the artifact compare to any known man-made object on record within a relatively similar time period? And I believe it does with this so-called worked stone from the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Criteria 3. Flint knapping techniques. I'll be honest, the object is rife with them. You can see multiple ridges, multiple bulbs of percussion, multiple bulb angles. Also, in this high-resolution image, you can see what's referred to as fissures. These are key fingerprints of knapping a stone, This artifact clearly illustrates plenty of features to be considered man-made.
To be honest, I find his conclusions pretty interesting, and he also talks about another, lesser-known artifact from the site.
I'm going to talk about these two artifacts shown here, found in the Echo 2 Trench, located on Terrace 5. Because much like the Kujang stone artifact, I found a nearly identical man-made artifact in the historical record. The artifact, referred to as a large grooved stone, found in Greene County, New York in 1952, and its documented source is the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian.
Now, he did a much better job explaining all of that than I could have done, so I highly recommend you watch the full video on his channel. However, mainstream archaeologists argue that it's basically all natural, which it could be. This is an extinct volcano after all, and lava tubes and weirdly shaped stones are certainly something we find in nature. But without excavation, no one can say for sure. And strangely, despite the site's significance, a full-scale archaeological excavation has never been conducted. The absence of such an effort has only fueled speculation. If this site were properly explored, it might confirm an advanced prehistoric civilization. Thus, many suggest archaeology could be blocking this to maintain the traditional timeline. Now, I don't think this is wholly true, and I do have an update on this, which I'll get to in just a second. But first, we need to talk about what I believe is a pretty shady reaction to the publication of this paper. The reaction to the team's paper on Gunung Padang has been, to put it mildly, extremely shady. The paper was met with an onslaught of criticism, much of it coming from academics who have never even set foot at the site, let alone conducted any meaningful research there. The paper's retraction wasn't due to undisputed evidence proving it wrong, but rather because certain individuals didn't like its interpretation of the data provided. Now, that's not how science is supposed to work. You can't retract a paper because you disagree with the conclusion. Plenty of published papers are the subject of intense debate and disagreement. Then there's Nature publishing what can only be described as public slander against this paper, and others branding this work as pseudoscience when, in reality, the science behind it is sound. It's just the conclusions that are being debated. Real science operates through competing interpretations, not dogmatic suppression. But throwing around accusations of pseudoscience, as figures like Flint Dibble have done, despite having no geological expertise and never having visited the site, is reckless and career-destroying. The irony is that the site itself hasn't even been properly excavated, yet these critics feel confident in making definitive claims about what it isn't without offering a shred of counter-evidence. If anything, this entire debacle reveals an ugly truth about how rigid academic gatekeeping can be, shutting down new ideas not with better science but with institutional pressure and public ridicule. You don't have to agree with the team's conclusions. The site may not be 20,000 years old, but to completely discredit these scientists' careers and label them as pseudoscientists because you disagree with their interpretation of sound scientific data is not good conduct in my opinion. Not at all. Now, the authors actually published the entire email exchange they had with the journal during this retraction process, which I think is a pretty interesting read, and I'll link that down below. But I think really the reaction to this paper isn't about the science, it's about what it represents. Gunung Padang was heavily featured in Ancient Apocalypse, Graham Hancock's documentary series which challenges mainstream historical narratives and suggests the possibility of an advanced civilization deep in prehistory. This alone makes it a lightning rod for controversy. Many archaeologists see Hancock as a threat to their field, portraying him as a pseudoscientist, even when the research he highlights, like Dr. Hillman's, follows legitimate scientific methods. If Gunung Padang really is as old as this data suggests, it forces a re-evaluation of human history, something mainstream academics seem unwilling to entertain. The aggressive pushback isn't about protecting science. It's about protecting an entrenched paradigm. Again, this does not mean that the proposed older date is necessarily correct. I just think the retraction, criticism, and slander is unjustified, considering it's all based on interpretation of good, solid data. That being said, the authors did make some pretty definitive claims about Gunung Padang's extreme age, presenting their conclusions with more certainty than the evidence might strictly allow. A more cautious approach in their language could have helped avoid some of the backlash. Likewise, some of the more extreme reactions, accusations that archaeologists are deliberately covering things up or corruptly suppressing the truth, aren't helpful either. Not every academic is part of some grand conspiracy. Many are just skeptical, which is a natural part of the scientific process. At the end of the day, wouldn't it be better if both sides engaged in open-minded discussion, rather than resorting to dogmatic dismissals or inflammatory accusations? Well, yeah, that would be nice, as would further excavation of the site, which would really help us get to the bottom of this fascinating mystery. And that brings me on to this update I've been speaking about. A few weeks ago, Indonesia's Minister of of Culture, Fadli Zon, announced a major update. That research on the Gunung Padang megalithic site would finally resume after this weird decade-long hiatus. The renewed effort aims to settle ongoing debates about the site's true age and significance, with plans to involve both local and international experts in a thorough investigation. Zon emphasized the importance of the research, stating, "Gunung Padang is not just an archaeological site. It could change our understanding of history." Now, this is hugely exciting and reflects growing interest in Gunung Padang's potential to completely reshape our knowledge of ancient civilizations. Interestingly, Dr. Hillman was invited to this conference and gave a talk on his paper, suggesting that he isn't being sidelined and these future excavations may be conducted with an open mind. That being said, many skeptics were also present and probably also hope to be involved. With any luck, the team they put together is truly unbiased and conducts a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of this, because damn, I would like to know the truth of this site, and I'm sure if you're watching this video, you would too. Hopefully, with proper scientific methods and a collaborative approach, this new phase of research could provide crucial insights into one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the world. Because if Gunung Padang truly is over 20,000 years old, it would force us to completely rethink the timeline of human civilization. And that would be pretty fucking cool. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel.